puppy placemats for you or your pet.
Welcome. Today we're going to be making pet placemats. Finn's having a birthday party and he would like 6 placemats for his birthday party. To do that, you'll need a yard of background fabric, 5/8 of a yard of fabric for the front of your placemats, coordinating fabric for the appliques. You'll need some fusible web, and you will need a copy of these appliques that I have on my website. You'll need some cutting tools, some pins, and some coordinating fabric. This is Peaches. She's a little bit jealous and she's a little bit of a mooch. She's going to probably be in and out today joining us.
Well, I think Peaches distracted me. Let's go over the supplies one more time. To make 6 placemats, you will need 1 yard of background fabric, 5/8 yard of fabric for the front of the placemats, a piece of batting or fleece 22 inches by 43 inches, or you could use 6 separate pieces of fleece approximately 10 inches by 14 inches. You'll need scraps of fabric for your appliques and fusible web.
When you purchase your background fabric, it's probably going to come 36 inches, which is 1 yard, by the width of the bolt, and that's usually about 42 to 44 inches. Your fabric will come off the bolt kind of like this. We are going to fold it the opposite way to cut it. We'll get more out of it if we open it up and fold it the opposite way. This is how we're going to cut it, just like this. So you're going to lay your fabric out. You might want to double check. We're going to be cutting it in 14-inch strips this way, 14 inches, then another 14 inches, another 14 inches. So 14, 28, and then 42. Okay? Okay, so you have the fabric folded the opposite way it came on the bolt. Lay it out. I'm going to fold it in half or up again so that I can cut it easier. Line it up with the lines on my mat. Lay this out nice and neat. Okay. This up. Okay, we're going to cut off the selvage. And just make sure to double check your fabric. For the back of the placemat, it's going to be 14 by 18. We're actually cutting it like this. 14, then another 14, and then another 14. So we're going to cut off the selvage. Whoops, I'm getting my glasses. Okay, so on my mat, I cut it at 1. I need 14 inches, so I'm going to go down to 15. I'm going to cut that off. Since my mat is not very big, I'm going to scooch this down to the 1 again. To the 1. Line it up real nice. Smooth it out. I'm going to cut it at the 15 again. Here we go. At the 15. And then I'm going to move it down to the 1 again. Line that up nice and straight. Move it down. Cut at the 15, so that'll give me 14 inches. So we'll have 14 inches strips. Okay, 14, and then we end up with this, so it should end up with just a little bit left over. Okay, there we go. Okay, so you have these 14-inch strips. We're going to need to cut them. They're going to be 14 by 18. So we are just going to get that out of it. You should get 2 out of each piece of this. So you're just going to trim it up, lay it down, trim it up to be 18 inches long. You can stack these. If you can cut 4 at a time, you could double them up and stack them, or you could just cut 2 at a time. We'll line them up. Let me see, I've done the 2. Okay, line that up. Cut just a smidge off this end. off of there. And I'm going to go down to here. And you just a smidge there. Okay, so we've cut these. This is the background fabric. If you lay this on your mat, lay it out, they should be 14 by 18 long. And you can go ahead and trim up the rest of these for your background fabric. So when you purchase your fabric for the front of your placemats, it's going to come 5/8 of the yards is 22.5 inches. So it's going to be 22.5 inches by the width of fabric, which is about 42 to 44 inches. We're going to open that up. We're going to fold it in half like we did before. That way we can get more out of this piece of fabric. We're going to lay it down nice and neatly, and then we're going to cut out our placemats. Okay, and the top of the placemat is 10 inches by 14 inches. We're going to cut off our salvage of this and lay our fabric out. Make sure we get what we need out of this. So we should be able to get 1, oh that's 2, this would be 4, and this will be 6. It's going to be close. Just take off just a little bit more than your salvage and you should be perfect. Okay, so we're going to lay that out. Fold that neatly, try to press it down. So I've cut off my salvage. I am going to go over 14 inches. Here we go. Let's see right here. 14 inches. I'm going to lay this over here for now. Slide this over. Lay that down. See if I can get that nice and straight. Lay that out. Okay. Got my pattern. Know that 14's here. I started at 2 and I'm going to 16. Move that out of my way. There we go. That, and then our last piece. Let's slide that over. I'm going to do the same. I'm going to go to the 2. And double check, it matches up with this, with 2. I'm going to go to my 16. Got 14 inches, 10 by 14. Okay, this way. Here we go, I got that. So this suddenly gives me 6. And then I'm going to need to cut these 10 inches wide. So we'll flip this, so you'll need our 10 inches. Okay, just to double check. I started at 6, I'm going to 16. That'll give me my 10 inches. Okay, so you'll cut all of these. You want them to be 10 by 14 for the front of your placemats. Okay, so now we have the back of our placemats cut. We have the front of our placemats cut, and we want to cut the batting, or you can use fleece if you would like, to the same size as the front of the placemat. So you want to cut the batting in pieces that are 10 by 14, same as your front fabric. They can be a little bigger. We can trim them down later, but you want them to be at least 10 by 14. And we're going to put them together because we're going to do some quilting to make sure that the front fabric stays to the batting. Okay, so I have matched my top of my placemat fabric to a piece of batting or a piece of fleece, whatever you'd like to use. And I want to draw some diagonal lines so that I can quilt on them, sew on the lines. So you can use a 45-degree triangle. You could definitely use that to get started with your first line. I'm going to just lay it right here. You need a marking pen, something you can mark with that will disappear off of your fabric. Just make sure that it's something safe you've used before. And I'm going to mark my first line. Okay, mark my first line. Then I'm going to go parallel lines that are 3 inches apart. So I have a 3-inch here ruler. I'm just going to lay it down and I'm going to mark again. Lay that down, mark across here. Hopefully you can see that. I'm going to keep going. Okay, all the way across my fabric. Okay, and then I need to go this way. All right, and then that's just gonna leave me that little bit. So you're gonna put diagonal lines. If you don't have a 45-degree triangle, if you have a mat, it has a 45-degree triangle on it. And what you can do is you just line your fabric up straight along an edge here. You can line it up with an edge. And if you line it up like that, and then here's your 45, you could just connect it from there to down here to get your first line, 45-degree line. Go across your fabric, and then the width of your ruler every 3 inches. If you want to do a little less than that, that's fine. Okay, and then we're going to take this to the sewing machine and we're going to sew, and we're going to lengthen our stitches a little bit to be a little bit bigger than what you would normally quilt with. I'd say about a 3.5 or a 4.0. Okay, so once you've sewn all your lines, you got all your lines sewn in, now you want to mark the opposite direction. So you want to go 90 degrees from where your line is before. So I can take this 45-degree ruler that I have here, and I can start my mark. Okay, and then I can just go use this one if it's not long enough to continue that. Okay, so we're going to go like that. We'll go over 3 inches. Mark. Three inches. Oh, it won't matter. Rotate this. We'll go 3 inches. And 3 inches. Okay. So then we'll get a nice cross-hatch effect when we finish these up. So we'll go to the sewing machine and we'll get these sewed going the opposite direction. Okay, so we have our quilted lines on the front of our placemat. You can do all 6 exactly like this, or you could experiment with some fancy stitching, you know, little wavy lines, or you can free motion quilt these. However you decide that you want to do this, keep in mind the appliques that you might want to use on them, because some might work better with straight line or curvy lines. It's depending on you. And you want to read what's recommended for your batting. If it says the quilt at a minimum every 3 inches, you would want to do this. If it says 4 inches, then you can make them a little wider. You can always go smaller. So this is what's set up for this. Once you have this done, you can go ahead and trim your edges. So we'll trim off the extra just to get rid of it. So we get that. Rotate it, trim them. Okay, we can trim these up real nice. Get them cleaned up. There we go. Okay, so you have your top of your placemat nice and quilted. You're going to want to pick an applique to go on there. You can download these from our website. We're going to start with the bone. I think the bone is probably the easiest to do out of these. You're going to trace the bone. You just go on here, trace it onto your fusible web, the paper side, and then you're going to cut that out, leave a little extra room. Okay, you don't want to cut right on the line. You want a little extra, so we're going to make it just a little bit bigger Doesn't have to be neat because you're going to trim all this up, okay? We're going to cut the bone out, okay? And we have to decide what kind of fabric, what fabric scrap we're going to use to make the bone. I think I just want my bone to be white. Okay, I have ironed my fusible web to the fabric that I want to use, and now I am going to cut it out right on the lines. So I'm going to cut through the paper, onto the lines. Okay, and then this fusible web goes on the wrong side of your fabric. For this white fabric I have, it really doesn't matter. Both sides are the same. And cut it out. Okay. So I have my bone. Okay, so now that I have it cut out, I can take the paper off. Here's my fabric side, my paper side. And take the paper off and put it where I would like on my placemat. Okay, I've ironed my bone on, and now I'm going to take it over to the sewing machine. And for this bone, I'm just going to do a small straight stitch around the outside edge. Okay, I finished up the bone. I just did a straight stitch around the edge, kept it kind of simple, and I used darker thread so it would show up on video. So the bone is done, and now we're going to move on to the house. For the house applique, you're going to need to trace the outline of the house. You'll need to trace the door on a separate piece of fusible web, and you'll need to trace the roof on a separate piece of fusible web if you'd like for these to be different colors. I'm going to use 3 different colors. I'm going to do the main part of the house in this leaf fabric, the roof in a black, and then I'm going to try to make it so there's a dog in the doorway. We'll give that a try. When you trace out your fabric onto this fusible web, you don't actually need all this fusible web. It can make your applique quite stiff. So you can fold this in half and cut out the middle, and it'll give you less bulk. So I'm just going to cut out some of this. Okay. And then you can iron it onto your fabric. You still have the outline, but you don't have quite as much bulk.
Here you can see that I've ironed my fusible web to the wrong side of my fabric.
Okay, so I have my fusible web ironed onto the back of my fabric and cut out. I cut the roof off a little bit, so you can see this is a little bit smaller than the roof, because then we're going to take our roof piece, put it over top, and then we have our little door right there. So this is ready to go onto the placemat, wherever you decide you want it. Something like that. And remember, you're going to have probably a food dish on there. So maybe that right there.
We've gone over the bone applique and we've gone over the house applique. The other appliques are pretty much the same. You will just trace them on to your fusible web, cut them out, and adhere them to the wrong side of your fabric. If you decide to do the superhero applique, remember that when you use fusible web, you have to put letters on the fusible web backwards, because they'll be going on the wrong side of your fabric and then flipped over.
Now that we have our applique sewn down to our fabric and we have it quilted, we want to sew our front fabric onto our back fabric. And our back fabric, as you'll notice, is bigger than the front fabric. What we want to do to sew it together is we want to take the wrong side of our fabric, and each side of the fabric, we want to mark it in the middle. We want to put a mark midway on each side of the fabric. And to do that, we can just simply fold it in half. You can press to mark a little crease there. Press to mark a crease. And then you can come back with a marker. This is an erasable marker, but you actually can use a regular marker because you won't see it. And you can mark it, or you can take a pin and you can put a pin in it. Put a pin in the side. We'll put a pin over here. We pin our sides. Okay, now we want to mark halfway on these sides. So every side of your fabric needs to have a mark halfway in the center. So we're going to fold it in half. We press it. Okay, we open back up and we'll have a little crease there. We can mark it with our pen. There's our crease over here. We'll mark it. I'm gonna put a pin in it just to be careful for me because my erasable marker tends to fade out pretty quick. So we'll mark that. We'll come over here and mark this. So for all of your fabrics that go on the back of your placemat, you're gonna go mark the center of each side. So you have that clearly marked or stick a pin in it. And then for our front fabric, this front fabric, we're gonna do the same. We're gonna mark it in the center on each side, on the wrong side of the fabric. So we're going to fold that in half, press it. If you need to, if you can't see it very well, press it, mark it. There we go, I got my mark there. Fold it in half, press, whoops. Mark this. Okay, so we got it marked halfway. Okay, and then we'll fold it this way and we'll fold it in half, mark it, or you can stick a pin in it. Okay, and we fold this in half, stick a pin in it. Okay, so we have that marked. Okay, so you'll do that to all the fronts, mark them on the back halfway on each side. And then in the corners, you want to mark from in 1/4 inch. So you want 1/4 inch coming in from the outside in and 1/4 inch from this side going in. So if we have a ruler like this one, you can take it. Let me see, that has a little notch in it. You lay it down. For me, this is 1/4. Okay, and you want to mark this like this. You have a little... On each corner, you want to do that. Okay, and you'll mark it. Okay, mark it. And we'll flip this over. We'll mark all 4 corners. Okay, so 1/4 inch in from each side, so you have a little kind of square there in the corner. Okay. We'll come over here, mark it, okay? So you'll mark it. And then what you're gonna do is you're gonna put your fabrics right side together. Let's move that out of the way. You'll take your background fabric, right sides together, so you have your front and your back, and you're gonna pin this at the center here. So centers together. Let's pull that down, so we'll pin this center to center. And it kind of helps that you already have a pin there. But pin that, and then just take it, lay it down, pin it to this spot here. Okay, you pinned it there. Take it here, pin it at your marking you have here. Okay, then you want to take this to your sewing machine, and you want to sew from this pin all the way down to this pin, and you don't want to sew in this area where the square is. You want to avoid that. So you want to start your stitching here and back stitch, sew all the way down, stop, back stitch, tack that in. Once you get that seam done, you're going to do the same to this side. You're going to take this, put your centers together, so center to center, pin it. Okay, lay this down. Pin it, and you'll sew the same. And you don't want to sew in this corner area, so you start at your marking and you'll sew all the way, stopping in this spot right here. Okay, so you'll sew those, that sides, okay? Okay, now that you've sewed the long sides of your placemat, this side and this side together, you've stopped at your marking, so you've stopped 1/4 inch from the edge. Now you're going to sew the sides together. Okay, so you're going to do the same. This is a little awkward. Get your butt out of it. You're going to take the center of your side and mark it out with the center of your back. And you're going to pin that together. Do you have to help me today? Do you? Okay, so you're going to do that, and then you're going to lay this out. You're going to tuck this corner out, and you're going to pull this up. You're going to make sure your edges are even here, and you're going to pin it right there because we're not sewing in that 1/4 inch from the end. Okay, so you're going to pin it. So you have a start and a stop place. Same thing with this edge. You're going to lay this out. Make sure you tuck this out. Pin it together. Kind of pull your corner out. Pin it. Okay, and you're going to sew as you did before from this pin, keeping your edges together all the way down to this pin. And you want to make sure that you're only sewing through the front, the batting, and the back. Like you don't have these edges tucked under. You want to make sure they're out of the way, pulled out of the way, and you're going to sew down. And then when you get to this side, you're going to have to leave an opening because you're going to need a way to turn this inside, right side out. So you can pin this together. So centers together. Okay, and then I can put I like to put a double pin so I know to stop. So I can put a pin here. And I'll put a double pin here. Okay, I'm going to make sure my corner's pulled out, my edges are even. I'm going to pin where I'm starting from because I'm going to start from where I marked. Okay, there. And then I'm going to put a double pin in on this side. Pin there. Pin here. And then I'm going to make sure these are even and this corner is pulled out. I'm going to pin here. Okay, so on one side, you're going to need to sew from the edge to where you marked your double pins. Don't sew in between your double pins, and then from your double pins, sew to the edge. That way you'll have an opening here to turn this placemat right side out when you're ready for that. Okay, so we are going to sew from here to here, back stitch, leave this open, start here, back stitch, sew to these pins, back stitch. Sewed it well, you'll see that you've not gone into this 1/4 inch from the edge. Like your stitches will line up right here in the corner. Okay, we've sewed our sides of our placemat, and now we want to sew these edges. They'll come out as a nice 45-degree angle when we turn this right side out. So you want to take this, I like to put my point of my placemat kind of to my right because I'm right-handed, and you want to fold it together with the battings together. If you hold this point, fold this together, okay, fold it like that. Okay, you can put a pin in that if you would like to hold that together. Okay, and you want to kind of smooth this corner out, both sides of your fabric. Make sure that it's laying so that you only have the back fabric of your placemat there. It should be just 2 pieces of fabric in both the back side of your placemat. You're going to lay that down. You get a ruler. You need a 90-degree angle, and you're going to take the ruler and you're going to take it to that dot where you stop sewing. On this one, it's a little hard to see, but it's right there. And then I'm going to put that down there, line the bottom of my ruler up with the bottom of the fabric. I'm going to mark a straight line. And this line I'm going to sew on. I'm going to start here, and I want to make sure that I don't go through the batting. You can feel the batting on this. It's real thick. I want to start right off the batting and sew straight down and back stitch here and back stitch here. And don't go over into the batting because you'll get a little pucker if you do. It's not the end of the world, but you might not want the pucker. Once you've sewed all 4 of your corners, you have this line coming down. There's you have this 90-degree angle right here. Your line's coming down. You're going to trim this extra fabric off of all 4 corners. And I would suggest, if you haven't tried this technique before you trim this corner off, I would turn the placemat right side out, lay it out flat, make sure all of your corners are laying correctly. They should lay nice and flat. You'll have a 45-degree angle here. Everything will lay flat for you before you trim that. Once you trim it, if you've sewed it incorrectly, you can't get that right. You would have to start over again. So I would turn it, if you haven't done this before, turn it right side out. Make sure your placemat is laying correctly, and then turn it inside out again. Trim off your corners, and you'll be ready to go. That's it. Just trim off the corner. Once you have all 4 of your corners trimmed, you're going to want to turn your placemat right side out. Once you have your placemat turned right side out, you're going to want to take something and put it inside. Push your corners out real nicely. Go in here, tuck your corners out. And then you're going to take this to the ironing board and you're going to iron it nice and flat. Mine got all wrinkly from turning it right side out. You're going to iron it real nice and flat. And this opening that you have, you want to push the batting towards the opening. And then you're going to fold this edge under. Iron it down nice and flat. And then you're going to take it to the sewing machine and you're going to sew on the back fabric all the way around your placemat. I have one here that I've completed. So this one I've sewed all the way around the outside edge. Once you've stitched around the outside edges of your placemat, you are finished. From here on, you just need to figure out whether you're going to keep all 6 for yourself or you're going to gift them to some of your friends and family.
Finn and I hope your placemats turned out well. Please comment below and let us know which one is your favorite.